When I was attacked, I couldn't even make sense of why would you need 10 clash and calls? You could do this with a pistol, you know, and I'd just get out. But they grabbed me by the neck. They were hitting me and I kept saying, yeah, there's no need to hit, just take the money and the watch and you've got the car, just let me go. And he said, Shahbaz, main tumhare liye aaya hu. Seeing death right in front of you so many times, you just have a appreciation for this, for the now. Whenever I speak to someone, I always try to tell them, you know, please live in your present and be really grateful and don't let any of your trials of the past bring you down, because they've actually molded you into a stronger person and you're here today. And that's amazing on its own.
Was it easy to get back into a car and start?
Yeah, man, that's the first thing I did was get into a Hummer and break an army checkpost in cantonment. That's the first thing I did. I came back and my mamu had bought an orange Hummer. Okay. Again, everybody thought, you know, maybe he's got a phobia with driving, maybe he's a Taliban, maybe he's extremist. I put on that something in Paris by Jay-Z and Kanye West. Got into the Hummer and my whole house security, the media was like 3 days, they were like outside a barrier of my house. And suddenly you see this orange Hummer leave and I got to the cantonment checkpost and I didn't realize it was chota hai or whatever. So I hit the barrier and kept going. And the guys also recognized, ye to wohi hai. So they didn't say anything. Listen, I'll be honest with you, this is very normal. Okay, having a watch and saying how it looks on me, and a nice car and saying how other people will say it looks on me, this is normal. And if you're buying a luxury good, come on, man, it's your right. But obviously, I'm a bit of a nut as well. I'm a car enthusiast. Like, I love automobiles. And by the way, one of the hardest things in my life was switching from petrol onto electric. I was very skeptical, extremely skeptical about this. It's the best thing that I ever did. Since I was young, I had a Range, I had a SLK, I had a Land Cruiser, I had a Cayenne, which I think was the best car that I've ever had in terms of the drive is just, you just get addicted to a Porsche. But this car is amazing. I don't think I've experienced speed like this and like technology, and it's a very cool car. So the reason that these electric cars work is because the speed is guaranteed. Then they break price, right? You can get an E-Tron cheaper than you can get a C-Class. Am I right about that? Maybe. An E-Tron is 100 million times better than a C-Class. Like, there's just no comparison. You're driving one of the best cars on the road. Like, the technology of the car is unbelievable, and then there's specs, right? Then there's certain specs, like maybe the 5.0 isn't as good as the 5.5, maybe the GT, the sports one, is slightly better. They've got a sport pack. These are small changes. Overall, in terms of technology, all of them have the same thing. Unbelievable options. If you were to get the same stuff in a Mercedes, in a BMW, or even in a petrol Audi, it would cost you a lot. They followed my entire family for 3 months. So they would be tracing our routes to offices. They even knew the alternative routes that we... So imagine understanding that concept. It's only a concept that the intelligence explains to people that are important or come under high security that never take the same route to work. I did this one interview after my father was killed on BBC. And it was an Urdu interview. And that's actually how they found me. And then deciding between members of my family, they figured that, oh, you know, he's a bit soft-spoken, so he'll be an easier target. Like, the research, the R&D that goes behind a terrorist targeting you is extensive. They bought a house in Valencia to keep me. They bought 2 cars to dump. And I wasn't the first kidnapping that the group did. I was maybe 8 or 9 in line. And they had 8 or 9 successful ones. I was the only burden. So, you know, like the kind of funding that they have money to buy a 10 marla house in Valencia. They have money to buy 2 Honda Civic, a Corolla, 14, 15 phones, so that, you know, they're dropping 4 phones, they never make the same call. I cannot explain how lucky I was that one disposable mobile was caught. You know how there's a start button in cars, right? It didn't exist, say, in 2008, 9, 10, when these cars were coming out. So my SLK had a start button, which meant it had one of those keys. So when I got kidnapped, the guy who was supposed to drive my car, he was an Uzbek terrorist, you know. Because usko chabi nahi mili, he got left behind, they drove me away, and another rider had to come and basically pick him up. Somewhere in there, the rider, he was wearing a helmet. His phone fell out of the helmet. And when the ISI arrived at the scene, that's one of the first things that they tracked was that phone. It's unfortunate by the time they actually traced and tracked me down, I was gone. Fajr पे हम निकले हैं Valencia से, और I remember them opening their iftari in Meerut. They literally ran these towns and with impunity. And they actually, अगर उधर locals का मसला होता था, the Tehreek-e-Taliban would solve the issue. I mean, they were kind of governing these places till Zarb-e-Azab when they were bombed out. I think the first thing that I said was, please don't kill me. Because that's it. I knew that this has to be some kind of an extreme. Naam pata hona is very difficult. And funny enough, the last movie I'd seen was A Mighty Heart, which is about Daniel Pearl's murder. And I just watched that on an Emirates flight back to Lahore. So just imagine that's the last thing that you've seen, and then you're in this situation. Listen, you have to understand one thing, okay? Car enthusiast, loves technology, 5-year gap, missed smartphone altogether, went from BBM, came back to these things in your hand that operate your entire house, okay? But you know, learning technology, and it's like part of your evolution as a human being, right? You can't be stagnant about these things. So I breathe all this in, you know, I love it. Electric is the future, I'll tell you why. They are now in California, right? They've passed a law that by 2024 or something, no more petrol cars are allowed. So what happens is, Purani gaadiyan are different, but it's kind of like that rule in London with you get it. So you're not going to be allowed to buy a petrol car. So whether it's Lamborghini, whether it's Ferrari, Mercedes, BMW, Audi, all these guys are already onto it, right? All of these guys have to now start making, for example, the Urus. It has to be electric. If you want to sell it in California, which is one of the largest markets for this car, you have to have it in electric. Now, when you start making Lamborghinis, and I'm sure you all follow Formula One, right?
Let's go. Longer on the head.
I think whatever Formula One basically dictates, when it was on the hybrid engines, it was fine. Now it's coming more to these electric engines. There's still the petrol aspect into it. Firstly, petrol and diesel is getting too expensive, okay? Secondly, owning a car and maintaining it is a thing. These cars don't require any maintenance. They have like 10 moving parts, right? And none of those moving parts require maintenance except for the brakes and brake oil. Literally entire change, which is what, 4 years? My E-Tron costs me less than my wife's Civic. Can you even comprehend that? An Audi is costing me less to maintain with software updates, with whatever the checkup is, anything, charging, name it. It costs me less than a Honda Civic. And if that's the line, then where are these engines heading, and where is this technology heading? So I see in another 10 years, they're going to have electric cars for normal people with it's all about mileage. Your car has to give you about 500 kilometers on a tank, and you need to find, I mean, the fast charge is 45 minutes. I think it's amazing, but maybe a little faster, maybe 20 minutes, and nobody in the world would have a problem. So I just see like a wipeout in petrol and diesel. Even though I get it, you guys love cars, and that's the only way, one thing, but you've got a GT, and you know what that 4 seconds feel like. They kept injecting me with ketamine. It was not supervised. I think it's synthetic heroin or something, or it's used to, you know, literally put elephants to sleep. And I should have died with all this garbage being injected into me, but I think, again, you know, sometimes God just saves your life. So, I mean, you know, a lot of people ask me, do you think security would have helped you? Do you think this? I never get into the what ifs. I spent so much time alone. I get a little emotional about this, but you know, loneliness is something I can never explain it. Physical pain is very easy to explain. We've all been in fights. We've all had some sort of physical pain. सर फट गया, टांग टूट गई, फुटबॉल खेलते हुए भी हड्डी टूट जाती है, लड़ाई में भी कुछ हो जाता है. जो ऐसे भी है, आपको दर्द समझ में आता है. But loneliness is such an alien concept to people like us. You know, we live in happiness. Sometimes we feel alone, but our parents are there, our friends are there. Somehow the situation is always better. But when you're with yourself and you're in solitary confinement and you're being tortured and you have a lot of anxiety and stress, what happens is you start you go into a reverse cycle where you don't want to live. You actually lose the will to live. And I always tell people, you know, I realized that my biggest enemy wasn't even my kidnappers. It was me. My memories, my life, my privilege, all the fun, you know, the Shahbaz of 2011, he was my worst enemy, his experiences. You know, I'll tell you something about being naive. When they kidnapped me, for the first 1 week, I thought, abhi main niklunga, because I had a flight to LA. When I missed the flight to LA, I thought, okay, I still got 2 weeks there. If they release me in a day or two, I'll still make it in time for my holiday. 4 months later, I realized I ain't never going back home. You know, that's how delusional one can be with his own privilege and blinded and not realizing, yeah, I'm actually going to be beheaded on camera. So, yeah, it's a crazy situation. Acha, I have to stop you. No one is allowed to eat in my car. No one can eat in my car. This is the first thing. I'm very particular, okay? No food, no smoking in my car.
So we're not going for samosas in your car?
No, and I'll tell you why. I love the smell of a new car. The only way to maintain it is not allow people to smoke in your car. It kills the thing. And food. So you have to be clean to sit in my car. Whether you're my child or whether you're my wife or whether you're my mother, your hands cannot be greasy. And please don't touch anything. Just ask me. I will change everything. So I'm a bit anal like that.
I can safely say you can now hug Mr. Producer.
The first time that I saw the E-Tron, by the way, was Tony Stark was driving it, right? So if Tony Stark is driving the car, you can't go wrong, right? He's the most stylish superhero, inspired millions. So I'm, you know, from the Margala generation, you know what I mean? The 98, 99, got our first car, was a Suzuki Margala. Had that shitty deck system, but full, usko change kara ke Sony wala laga ke full blast karte the subwoofer wala. So, you know, sound, we've got the Penda Nasinas, right? Lohari to hai. So the sound is really important. The fact that we don't have to take the decks out anymore, it just comes with nice sound systems, it's cool. It's cool. Before I got kidnapped, whatever car I was driving, I had the sound system for it changed, you know? So I'm big into sound systems and, you know, quality and stuff like that. This is the one, this and the Cayenne. I think the Cayenne also had a BMW. Oh, it had a Bose one, you're right. It had Bose, which is very good. It was a base model Cayenne. This B&O one is fantastic.
Yeah, is that a lot better than the Bose one?
Much better, much better. It's the best sound system I've owned in any car. And I love, like, I know I've done my cross-trek country from Afghanistan to Pakistan, but I've done the 101. I've done the drive from Rome to Tuscany. I've done from England to, you know, the south of France. I've done some of these drives that they say are, you know, and I've loved every single one. And by the way, even after doing all of this, the best drive that I ever had in my life was the Swat Expressway. I don't know if you've done it, but if you love cars, take your car on this expressway. You will experience something that is so unique, okay? The terrain, the beauty, it's magnificent. There's nothing, there's no south of France, there's no Amalfi Coast, there's no 101, nothing that can give you this, okay? And one of the best experiences, my younger brother and me, and we did the entire Swat Expressway all the way to Kalam, just unbelievable. I gave up so many times, and I'll tell you a sad story. When I wanted to take my own life, right? And I'd pumped myself. I was like, you know, you can't be tortured every day and be kept like an animal. So they used to give me a blade to, you know, clean myself. And I sat in the bathroom with that blade right here. And I couldn't do it. And worse than wanting to take my life was realizing that I'm a coward. That knowing the pain around me, I couldn't even do this simple act. I was in a very bad place because now not only am I suicidal, I'm also a coward who can't do it, right? And my situation hasn't gotten any better. And I used to read the Quran. It was my thing. I read it. I used to rely on it for hope. My father used to say this. He used to say the Ayatul Kursi will protect me. And then he was murdered and he was wearing his Ayatul Kursi. So, you know, sometimes you have these angry questions. So I used to ask Allah, I was like, you know, why didn't your Ayatul Kursi protect my father? And again, when I asked this question, I was reading the Quran and I found this amazing thing about the Ayatul Kursi in the explanations. And it said, the Ayatul Kursi, when somebody says protection, what's the first thing that comes into your mind? My body, my wealth, my children, my worldly possessions. No. The Ayatul Kursi will protect your soul. It'll protect your heart. And it'll get you to your finish line, wherever that finish line is. Put your tawakkul in Allah. It's very difficult for me to explain these things sitting in this position today. You know, almost sounds like a fantasy. But I promise you, this belief, you know, when you ask me, did you give up hope? I never gave up.